Welcome back, Camden Catholic. I'm going to do my best this time around to actually try and make this flip near almost as good as the last one that I made that unfortunately had no sound to it, but we'll see what we can do. And remember, this flip is not necessarily due until Thursday in class. Just make sure you're paying really good attention, and there's kind of like an assignment at the very, very end of it. So make sure that you stay focused on that, all right? Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, I know most of you probably won't see this until tomorrow just because you're all getting ready for your PSAT tomorrow, right? So, anyway, but let's go ahead and get started. Ancient Roman government, right? So, anyway, these are the four vocab terms that I told you to kind of gloss over a little bit in class. Now, the reason I kind of told you to gloss over them a little bit in class is because I didn't really want to mix up Roman lifestyles and everything else. Speaking of Roman lifestyles, really quick, somebody tell me real fast. Excuse me. How many types of people are there in Rome? Good job, Justesh, right? There's two. Can anybody tell me who they are? All right. Good job. I hear you. Everybody calm down a little bit. The Patricians and the Plebeians. Which one of those two are the rich people? Good job, Alexa. The Patricians are the rich ones, right? Whereas the plebes are the poor / middle class, right? Now, all of this works into how their government is structured. Sorry. All this works in how the government is structured, right? So the republic, of course, is a nation where the power of the citizens can elect. The power is in the hands of the citizens, and they get to elect these large bodies of representatives, right? Now, a consul. These three last terms are very, very important, right? Consuls, dictators, senators. Okay, so in this entire big grand scheme of everything, their consuls are the first two people. They are two main elected officials of the Roman Republic. They oversee everything and they watch to make sure everything is going according to plan, right? The second kind of person is a dictator. Now, a dictator is a ruler that is only brought in during a time of war, right? They're used to try and centralize the chain of command, to try and make it, because during a time of war, do we want to be arguing and bickering over, like, where should we go? Who should we send? No, you want to centralize that chain of command. That's what the dictator is there for, right? There have been a lot of famous dictators throughout history, but the most famous Roman dictator, of course, was, good job, guys, Julius Caesar, right? So anyway, now, there's also the Senate, right? Really quick, in parentheses next to this, put 300 plus, right? There were actually over 300 different senators in the Roman Republic. Now, that's the Supreme Council, the highest governing body of Rome, right? They hold the power to debate and initiate laws. Okay, so that's their main referendum or their main ability. So, let's keep going. But anyway, so also last thing, add this in as well: citizen assembly. Okay, the citizen assembly. The Citizen Assembly is actually, it's the group of people, like literally at the Citizen Assembly, anybody could show up and start a law if they wanted to. So at the Citizen Assembly, I could come and discuss how morality was so upset about how the fry size went down today, right? So at the Citizen Assembly, anyone can come, right? So put Citizen Assembly. Now, really quick though, we talked about this as well, right? The plebeians are the lower class people, and they can have one of four jobs, right? They can be soldiers, farmers, merchants, or craft workers. And most of them lived in apartment-style dwellings. If you didn't get this during class, you need to go ahead and copy it down. But most of you have already seen this. So if you haven't already seen this, I would go ahead and pause this, jot it down real quick, and then we'll pick it up later on. But just to give you kind of an idea of who the plebeians are. The plebeians are the people that really honestly are responsible for the entirety of the Roman government. They're the soldiers, the farmers, the merchants, the craft workers. They do everything for everyone. Whereas the patricians, on the other hand, are a lot like old school nobles from Europe. They're just families with a really, really good reputation and possibly some money. Now, are all patricians wealthy? No, of course not. So, if there's a weird echo on this thing, I apologize, but we'll figure it out later on because I'm not doing this all over again. So, anyway, at the very, very bottom of the society, of course, were the slaves, right? Now, they were not counted as citizens. Neither were women, which is really, really sad. Many were freed by their owners if their owners chose to, and some were ever even given a chance to buy their freedom, all right? So, in all classes, the men ruled the households, and women helped make decisions, gave advice to their husbands, but also women could take no part in the government. So, a lot like ancient Athens, the women had a very, very, and that's a jump rubbing smiley face. And just like in Athens, the women had a very limited role in limited role in society and a non-existent role in the government. So And then this decided to happen. Because really quick, who is this unfair to? Like, who is this whole system really, really unfair to? Because who are the only people allowed to initiate government or participate in the government? Just like in ancient Athens, the wealthy were only allowed to participate in government. So, what type of people were the only people that were allowed to do government in Rome? Anybody? I'm waiting. All right. Good job. I heard you, Caleb McRae. The patricians were the only ones allowed to participate in their own government, right? So, each year, 2 consuls were elected by the citizens. They were the 2 chief officials, right? So, like I said a second ago, these 2 people had to be patricians. Now, the reason why this whole thing is unfair is because patricians do not understand the plight and they don't understand the problems of plebeians, right? We always make that example in class. You always got that one friend that wants to go to Wawa like all the time, and they don't really understand that you don't have enough money to go necessarily, right? So it's kind of like that, how people sometimes just don't get it, right? So 2 were elected. They could only be elected once every 10 years, and they could also veto each other, right? This is to try and keep one of them from gaining too much, good job, power, right? So make sure you write that down. They could only be elected once every 10 years, and they were elected for 1 year at a time. So consuls led the army. They were judges, and they had the same power as early kings, right? Now, but they could only serve for 1 year, and they could veto each other's actions. And then they couldn't serve again for another 10 years, okay? Make sure you get that down. So, and then during an emergency, the consuls actually would appoint a dictator to lead for 6 months until, like, the war was actually subsided and peace came back to the empire. Now, each 2 consuls had to obey whatever the dictator said. So already, as we can see, that this is setting up a really, really big, what am I trying to say here? This is setting up a really, really big, a lot of power for one person, right? Because here's the thing. If the dictator chooses not to step down, he doesn't have to, right? So anyway, now, the consuls were advised by the Senate, right? Now, there were over 300 senators that were elected for life. The only way you could become a senator is actually somebody else had to die. Now, anyway, they control the treasury and the foreign policy. So they controlled like areas that the Romans took over like as time progressed. Now, senators had to be patricians. Now, this is, of course, early on. And like I said, this is very, very unfair because in the society, well, who is there more of? Good job, Dante Burke, right? There's more plebeians out there, and the plebeians are the ones that are making all of the money for the society. So, and here's a squiggly line, and here's another guy. Like, these animations are just so good. It's ridiculous. Like, it took a long time for me to make this. Now, senators were the most powerful group in the government, right? They're the ones who start laws, hold the money, do the foreign policy, enact laws. Like, they're the ones who are supposed to keep everything running smoothly. And the consuls are supposed to be there just to kind of oversee the entire shindig, right? Now, anyway, the Republic of Rome was wasn't really a walk in the park, right? And it wasn't actually fair across the board because not every citizen had the same rights, okay? Because slaves had absolutely 0 rights, and then women had actually no voice in their government whatsoever. So, in 494 BC, the plebeians decided that they've had enough, that this is ridiculous, the fact that they're not allowed to participate in their own government, that they're not allowed to start laws, and that they're not allowed to do anything. They withdrew from Rome and formed their own assembly, right? They were called the Tribune of Plebes, or the Council of Plebes, right? Now, anyway, stupid plebes. Anyway, so, patrician. Now, so the patricians realized that the economy of Rome would crumble without the plebeians, right? Because remember, who does all the work? The plebeians do. So, they agreed to let the tribunes attend meetings and veto laws they didn't like. So that means that they had to add a group of plebeians to the government, right? This big new group of plebeians was called the tribunes. We'll talk about them in a second, but make sure you write tribunes and underline it a couple of times, right? So, one of the first things that the plebeians want to get done, they want the 12 tables to be posted in the forum, right? Somebody tell me what the 12 tables are again. Good job, Nadir, right? So the 12 tables are the very first publicly posted laws in any Western civilization. And they were written on 12 different tablets. Well, not like this, but they were chiseled on the 12 different tablets. And if they're publicly posted, that means at any time someone can come and reference them, right? So this made it so the plebes at any moment could challenge a law or challenge a patrician and say, it says here that you can't do that. Even though, ironically enough, most plebeians couldn't read. So it's like, I know it says something up there, but I just don't really know what it says. But you can't do that. And so anyway, but the laws were no longer hidden. That was the really, really important part. Now, plebeians also eventually are going to gain equal rights in all things considered, right? But remember that this is supposed to be the most fair system of government, and it took them over 400 years to get it right. So, excuse me. Now, these people were really, really important. They were added to the government to try and make it fair, right? So notice that the main thing about this whole system, though, is that there's no one person in complete control unless it's during a time of war, right? And that person, again, of course, is called the dictator. Good job. The tribunes are very important, though. They're this little old guy. Now, anyway, they were elected to protect the rights of the plebeians. To be a tribune, you had to be a plebeian. They held office for 1 year, and they could initiate laws as well. Their main power, though, their biggest power that we still use in our government today, and it's extremely important, is the power of the veto, right? Veto is actually Latin as to send back, okay? In Latin, it means to send back or to put away. So the tribunes had the ability to veto laws that they thought were unfair to the plebeians. Good job, fifth period. I heard all y'all shout out. Now, anyway, so they had the right to be able to actually send laws back to the Senate so they would be debated further. My hair is like all kinds of jacked up right now. There we go. So the tribunes were very, very important to this entire system. Now, by 367 BC, the government had become more democratic, and by 287 BC, complete equality in the government had been reached, and every single type of person was actually represented in it, except for women and slaves. We'll talk about how that is more messed up a little bit later on. But 2 consuls were also going to be elected. This is another big reform. So originally, remember, I said that the consuls had to be two Patricians, right? So by 287, they're actually 1 plebe, 1 patrician, right? And they could actually veto each other. So really quick, something I want to kind of add to this entire assignment and like this whole thing is I want you to write this down. This is actually gonna. Oh no! What happened? So this is gonna be how. Dang it! You can't see anything. Hold on. Let me drag it. There we go. And play. Nice. So this is what I'm going to be checking for on Thursday, right? As you can tell, this is a graphic organizer. I want you to copy this down in your notes. Draw it in your notes so I can see the whole thing. But the main part about this is there is a triangle right here, and of course this is war and blah, 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 blah. This is a system of ranking, and this is how the entire Roman government was set up. Now, I gave you a word bank. It's right here it's right, no. Hold on. There we go. It's right over there, right? It's right over there. So notice where it says citizen assembly, tribunes, dictator, consul, senate. It goes in each one of them goes one time in one of these 5 blocks, right? So take your notes, figure out where they go. I'll be checking this on Thursday. Very good job, Canon Catholic. This definitely wasn't as good as my last one, but it's pretty solid all the same. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. Do well on your PSATs, and if you've already taken them, wasn't that bad, was it? So, have a good night. I'll see you all then.